Welcome, everyone, and thank you once again for joining me for another session of Your Pleasure Incorporated into Daily Living. I'm your host, Ellen Nicholas Rathbone, life coach, sex educator, sensuality consultant, and lover of life, someone who believes in the human potential and wants every single one of us to experience it to its fullest, especially today when so much of our lives is being replaced by technology and confusion. I am the cheerleader for the human potential and its potential for pleasure. So today I want to talk about foreplay. Now, foreplay is absolutely essential. And in the olden days of ancient India, foreplay for the wealthiest would take up to 4 hours, hours of sensual pleasure, all kinds of experimentation, all kinds of touching, all kinds of wonderful communication to bring each other to wonderful heights of ecstasy. The sad fact that in today's very rushed society, married couples have expressed that foreplay for them takes about 10 minutes, and unmarried couples say that it takes about 15 minutes. That is really gypping ourselves big time. It takes a good lover 20 minutes of physical and mental stimulation to arouse the average woman enough so that she has enough lubrication inside her vagina and so that the walls of her vagina and her clitoris fill with enough blood to be able to have an orgasm. So this 10-minute, 15-minute baloney is not going to cut it. And that's not going to do it either. So it's important to remember that if pleasure is the goal, it is important to take time to experiment, to touch each other in pleasurable ways, and to find out what the other enjoys. So the best part of taking a long time to get excited is that once women do get excited, they stay excited and can stay excited for orgasmic pleasure for hours. So, yes, it is true that it does take women a little longer to get that blood inside their genitals, but once they get it to that level, they can be there for a while. Where that's why they compare women to irons that iron clothes, and men to light bulbs. Men heat up fast and cool down fast. Women heat up slowly and cool down slowly. So, there's positives and negatives to both of those. But if you are a lover who would like to see your female partner actually have many orgasms, or at least one, you're going to have to invest a little bit of time. And that time is about 20 minutes. So what's the purpose of foreplay? Foreplay is for couples who want to give each other sexual pleasure. And it comes in many, many different forms. There are all kinds of things that a person can do to excite. And I've mentioned this before, that for women, the orgasm starts in your mind. If your mind is excited, there's a good chance that the rest of you will get excited too. So women excite very differently than men, in the sense that they like what they see, they like being touched, and they like what they hear. And these are the elements of foreplay that should most definitely be incorporated into your practice. So another thing about foreplay is to remember that our bodies are constantly changing. So what was good for a 20-year-old might be a little different for a 30-year-old, definitely going to be different for a 40-year-old. And by the time a woman hits menopause, say in her 50s, things are very, very different. So where in her 20s and 30s and even 40s, she was making copious amounts of lubricant on her own, as soon as she hits menopause, it's not the same. And so foreplay becomes absolutely essential to make sure that the sex, especially if the sex is intercourse, is not irritating. So it's really important to put that time in there before you put anything else in there. And also to remember that the body changes. I mean, maybe in your 20s, you're really flexible and you have a lot of energy and that sort of thing, and that's great. But don't be hard on yourself if when you hit your 40s, you're not quite as flexible, or you don't have the same kind of endurance, or you have, situations where sometimes you don't have as much lubricant. That's where products come in really, really handy. And it's not a shame to use them. You wouldn't say, well, I'm not going to use a spatula to pick up that pancake because, I don't use tools. Well, it's the same thing. The tools are there for a purpose, and they will help the whole situation just go much smoother if you're free to use them, if you're comfortable using them, and you incorporate them in the fun. So it is a point of pleasure. If pleasure is the point for both of you, it's good to know and respect your body's partner so that you don't cause them harm or discomfort. And believe me, if you're having intercourse with a woman in her late 50s, early 60s, it is important to understand that spit is not lubricant, and you absolutely need to use some other kind of lubricant. Now, the one that I recommend off the charts is this wonderful cannabis infused, it's kind of like a moisturizer, and it's called Bliss, Bliss. And this is a phenomenal moisturizer for a woman's genitals. So you put it on the labia, you put it inside the vagina, you rub it around well, and in no time at all, it helps to plump up the skin. I compare it to, say, watering the lawn. When the lawn is very, very dry, it kind of sinks, everything is kind of dry, that's so great. But then you water the lawn for a good amount of time and it kind of plumps up the grass. Well, it's the same thing for the vaginal walls. They get thinner as a woman gets older, and the vaginal walls and the whole vagina does not produce the same amount of lubricant. So it's really important to incorporate some extra lubricant, and spit is not it. Okay, I know you want to think it is, but it's not. So there's many different kinds of foreplay. I think one of the best kinds of foreplay is dance. A slow dance with your sweetie, holding them tenderly in your arms, moving back and forth to music that feels nice, breathing their scent in, feeling them in a loving, caressing kind of a way is a wonderful way to excite someone. And then while you're doing that, maybe you're breathing on them, maybe you're kissing them on their ear or on their neck, or you're stroking their hair. You have lots of opportunities when you're in the upright position to get close to your sweetie. Also, I think erotica games are great fun because they will ask you questions that will cause you to think about what is exciting to you and to share that information, where maybe if you were just having a straight conversation with someone, you might be a little hard pressed to express your desires. But if you're playing a game and the question comes up, what are you going to do? You have to answer it. And so that is a great way to communicate with your lover, by playing different kinds of games. Another phenomenal foreplay is a sensual massage. When you touch your lover from the top of the head to the soles of their feet, paying attention to every inch of their body, lovingly touching it, and listening for responses from your lover, that is a wonderful way to excite each other. And I would definitely take turns. Like one day you do your partner, and then the next day your partner does you. And, this way you keep it fair and you keep it wonderful and you keep it equal, because everyone wants to get a massage. I mean, especially from someone that they love, to be touched in a tender and loving way I cannot express how important and wonderful that is for the relationship. And then don't be afraid of adult toys or lotions. They're there for a reason. Adult toys come in all kinds of degrees. There's things for bondage. There's vibrators. There's dildos. There's strap-ons. There's cat o' nine tails. There's soft floggers. There's just so many different tools that can be used not only for the physical excitement and the sensation that they provide, but also for the psychological excitement and excitement that they can provide. So these are things that, you can incorporate them. And I'm not saying that they're absolutely necessary every time you make love, but to throw something in the mix that is a little different than what you've been doing, to plan on spending some time with your lover, doing something different to excite each other with the purpose of exciting one another, is foreplay. And foreplay, believe it or not, can happen with a conversation, a telephone conversation, where you call your sweetie up and you say something sweet and romantic and sexy, and with a tone of desire, or what you'd like to do with them later on that day. Well, you've just planted a seed. And that's a very, very exciting thing to do, because for the rest of the day, that seed is germinating in their conscious mind. And so that by the time that you get together with them, they are very excited to be with you. And two more things. I think reading erotica to one another is very exciting, because again, it's stimulating the mind. And, I know I'm going to get a little flack about this, but good quality porn is also very exciting to watch, because while you're watching, you are seeing different kinds of techniques and different kinds of sexual situations, and you can discuss it. Like, would you like to try that? That looks fun. Or I don't think I'd want to do that, but they did something interesting there, and that looks like it would be fun. Watch award-winning porn. And if you don't know what award-winning porn is, it is pornography that has won awards for its story, the acting, the direction, and the techniques. And although there's not a lot of it out there, there's a porn star who's retired, but she became a producer and director of pornography. Her name is Candida Royale. And every single movie that she ever made is not only a great story, very compelling, very intriguing, but there is sexual technique that you can learn just by watching it. One of my favorite of all of her movies is one called My Surrender, where it is just so incredibly exciting and has so many different twists that you really can't predict what's going to happen next. And so that kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat. And I remember the very first time I watched it with my husband, and I'm watching this technique and I'm thinking, wow, this is really good stuff. This is like borderline educational as far as sexual technique is concerned. And I asked my husband, I said, you watching this? I said, and if you are, take notes, because this is something that you want to know how to do. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that you will like and subscribe to my show. My My email address is ypi69@hotmail.com. If you have any questions that you think would be great for the show, please definitely email them to me. It would be my absolute pleasure to answer questions or to bring them into the dialogue. Now, I see I have a couple of questions here. Okay. So here's a fellow that thinks that that toes are extremely sensitive and sexual. Well, he's absolutely right, especially the big toe. The big toe has so many nerve endings in it and is considered a major erogenous zone. Now, because feet are so incredibly sensitive, that area has to be handled with great sensitivity. You can't be handling it in a too soft, it's ticklish, too hard, and it hurts. So it has to be firm pressure, but there is absolutely nothing wrong or weird or anything about loving your feet and using them for the sensual tool that they are. And believe me, if you know the technique of shrimping, and shrimping is absolutely a sexual technique, you can help a person, specifically women. They're much more comfortable with it. I'm not saying that men can't, but I've never met a man that's had an orgasm via his toes. But women, definitely. That if you know the technique of shrimping and you massage them and then suck them gently from small to big, you can actually create a phenomenal orgasm from her feet, straight up her legs, right past her vagina, straight up her spine, and right out the top of her head. And it's an explosive, fantastic orgasm that can happen if you know what you're doing. So I did do an episode on shrimping. And so I would strongly recommend that you watch that. But it is a phenomenal technique. And as far as I'm concerned, between two consenting adults, there's no part of the body that should be disparaged. Okay. I know that people have all kinds of issues. They don't like hair. They don't like feet. They don't like underarms. They don't like this and that. And that's advertisers who have made you insecure about your body and who have convinced you that you need a product to fix yourself. You don't need those products to fix yourself. You need to embrace the fact that you have erogenous zones from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. Embrace your body's potential for pleasure and experiment with it to keep your sex life fun and sexy and interesting and exciting, because anything that you do regularly can become a routine and can become predictable. And as soon as foreplay is predictable, it becomes same old, and it's boring. And if it's boring, how are you going to get excited with boring foreplay? Now, I have another question is here. Romance begins in the kitchen. That's right. Okay. So massage is a very, very good idea. And I highly recommend it, whether you're going to massage each other from top to bottom, or you're going to focus on a particular area, and doing things together that are loving, and you're sharing an experience. And then you even can feed each other. That's also very erotic, to feed each other, because as I've mentioned many, many times, the verbiage that we use for sexual play, licking, sucking, biting, nibbling, tasting, all those words are used not only for food, but for things that we do to each other when we are in an intimate way. And so, the body is super sensitive and has great potential. And it's really a shame to just limit your foreplay to breasts and genitals. That's just so boring and so predictable. So if you want to experiment, if you want to to try touching different areas, I would go with a massage first. Ask a lot of questions. Communication is key here because not everybody likes the same thing everybody else does. So, you want to know what your partner appreciates, and by asking the question and being open to the answer. All right, that's really important. Don't think that just because you like it, they'll like it too. Some people like bondage, other people don't. Some people like having their toes sucked, other people can't even fathom it. But again, that's advertisers and what they have done to the human psyche. So if you can free your mind and open it up to your body's potential for pleasure, you are one step ahead of everybody else. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. If there are no more questions, then I'm going to sign off. Please, please, please subscribe to my show. And if you like it, please like it. Tell your friends, because Facebook will not allow me to advertise to all the thousands of people that I know, because the topic is pleasure. If the topic was guns, they probably would let me do it. If it was some other controversial topic, they probably let me do it. But oh, God forbid I should talk about pleasure and the human potential for orgasmic pleasure. That seems to be a real problem with the powers that be. So if you're enjoying this and you think others will benefit from it, definitely spread the word. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I hope you enjoyed my show, and I'll see you again next week for another episode of Your Pleasure Incorporated into Daily Living. Namaste, everybody. Do your Kegels. So important to enjoy that pleasure, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.